How you doing?
Can you hear me?
I can.
I did it.
I'm so proud of you.
I'm so proud of me too. I have never done a live anything before, ever.
Hey. Well, look at you.
Hi, Carrie. Oh, Carrie, I can't believe we live in the same place and have never met in person.
Right? Oh, there's Argon. Amy and whatever is here.
Oh my gosh, people actually wanted to join this.
Of course I'm here. What do you mean? I'm
You're so right.
just kidding.
Apologies for everyone who also has to listen to me while we're here for a
Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. You're awesome.
bit.
You're so funny. Oh my goodness. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. Um, we have a special guest, Emily Cole. She is the co founder of Ohio Families Unite Against Political Action and Change. And she runs, you can't see it, but the Ohio Police Reform Policy Table. Welcome. Welcome for joining us, or happy. Thanks for joining us. Oof, I'm not on my game. I told you.
That's okay. Thanks for having me. I'm so
Oh
honored to
yeah,
be here.
yeah, of course. I really appreciate the support that you've given to Eager. Um, and I want to support you any way that I can. So here you are.
Aw. I'm such a big fan of Eager, and it is, I was just thinking earlier today, I was like, oh my gosh, like Vix has their own organization, and that they helped found, and it came after I met you, like I got to watch it become a thing, and I just found the coloring book the other day, like my one of my kids was coloring in the coloring book that you made, so.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
so
well.
excited to be here.
So since you brought it up, let me just like refresh folks. I created a coloring book for Ohio Families Unite Against Police Brutality. It was intended to be like something they could just give out at events. But I took that opportunity and made it a real community resource for people to be able to talk about alternatives to police. It's on our website. It's for $1. If you want to get it, you can print it yourself, print it as many times as you want. But there it is.
It's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, it really did turn out good. And I keep trying to get my mind back into doing another one.
Mhm.
But I'm kind of waiting. I commissioned an unhoused person to do the artwork this time. And so
Cool.
they've had other things, they had a list of art projects they were working on, and hopefully they'll get to us here soon.
That is
I,
exciting.
yeah, I trust that they would, and they are an indigenous person too. So,
Love it.
yep, and they've had a lot of work here lately, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So, let's talk about the policy table. Um, you wear kind of three public hats, really. You're
Hmm.
a local legislator with the Hilliard City Council.
Hmm.
You're a founder, co founder of a statewide um, organization. Actually, two, right? Like,
I
are
I
you
did
Ohio Families
I did
too?
not help found Ohio Families, the C3 arm, Ohio Families United Against Police Brutality. That was all Sabrina Jordan and another mother who started that with her. So I help on our C3 arm, the nonprofit side. And then I co-founded with Sabrina OFU PAC, which stands for Ohio Families Unite for Political Action and Change. And we're really about building power for people who are directly impacted by the criminal legal system here in Ohio. So, we and I in particular are firm believers that the people who are have the most pain are closest to the solutions for the
Facts.
problems. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, OFU PAC is all about building people power. And it is the honor of my life to get to work for it and help build it. When we were first starting it, I told Sabrina, like, my vision was to try and, like, basically build the sports car. And I could drive it through the first couple of windows, but, it should really be the families in the driver's seat. Um,
And you've really kept up with that promise by empowering families. I've watched you put people in places that a lot of other people would have just taken the opportunity themselves. And I admire you for the work that you do, for the care that you take with these families, and how much you really empower them to take control of what they'd like to see happen. So I just want to kind of give you props for that because it's a lot of work that you do. And you're really taking the time and care that's necessary to do the job that you're doing. Anyway, I
aw,
won't embarrass you too much.
I don't
I
take
love you. You know
compliments
that.
well.
I know you don't, but you deserve the compliments.
Thank you.
Um, can you tell me what the policy table is and what
Yeah.
your role is?
Yeah, the policy table is my dream. So
It's dope.
when we started OFU PAC, Sabrina and I were like, okay, part of why we did it is because we were both part of a campaign to end qualified immunity in Ohio, and that campaign is still ongoing. It's in a much different form than when we were there. And for various reasons, she and I are not part of it, but we really clicked. And so I was telling her, I was like, you all have the nonprofit, the C3, so you can hold people in their tragedy, right? Like you are the only ones who will ever actually know what that's like. And families need a place where they can go that's actually safe and not just people claiming it's a safe space and then profiting off of everyone's trauma. So
Facts.
like the C3 was together, but like the limits of C3s are you can't really do political activity. So that means you cannot endorse candidates. You cannot work on political campaigns at all as the organization. And you have a very, very limited amount of lobbying that is tied to your budget. And what we all know, right, is that like black and brown led nonprofits, their budgets are a fraction of conservative white nonprofits. And so I was telling her, I was like, you need to build political power. Like, you need to build the political juice to force people to pay attention to what families are saying. And she said the same thing. And she was like, we need to be in the rooms that aren't on TV, the rooms that you don't read about in the news, where the actual policies are being drafted and made. And so I was like, you all should start a C4. You need a 501(c)(4) because what you can do with that, it's still a nonprofit, but you can do unlimited lobbying. So that means you can directly ask for policies. You can try and urge legislators and lawmakers to vote certain ways. And then you can also it has to be less than half, so up to 49% of your budget you can do on paid political work. So you can endorse candidates and go knock doors for them or send a mailer or put out a voter guide that says, hey, we think if you believe in accountable public safety, you should vote for these four candidates, depending on where you live. And so we did all the paperwork and we started it, and we were like, man, one day we might actually build enough of a platform where people listen when families raise their hands to speak. And the right people listen, right? Like the people with power. And so we just kind of kept going and going and going, and now here we are. We have a policy table that we started in 2023 because we spent all of our first year in 2022 just relationship building with impacted families, with other advocacy and grassroots groups around Ohio working on progressive issues. We also met people who aren't working on those things because relationship building is not just tied to a political party. There is no political party that actually represents all of us well. And so, yeah, we just continued to kind of be foot to the gas. And then we thought we want our own space, our own Zoom that we go to once or twice a month that's actually talking about our issues. Like we kept getting invited to these like coalition meetings, and it would be groups working on important things, things like voting rights access, and things like how do we talk about equity in Ohio, and how do we talk about LGBTQ rights and like all harm reduction, all really important things, but nothing that was about police accountability that actually centered people directly impacted. Like nothing. There's not a single space that, and there's still not, other than ours, that I know about that actually centers the people with the lived experience in the decision making. And so the policy table, that's what that is. It is a Zoom meeting. We meet every other week unless we're working on something really urgent or heavy, and then we pick it up to weekly. We meet virtually because we have members all over the state. And it's 50-50. Like 50% of the attendees are people who don't have some big fancy organization name behind them. They are real community members with real experience for police brutality. They have had loved ones killed by police. They themselves experienced police violence. They have had family members experience police violence. Um, and then the other half of the table is people like me, like policy people who like to talk about and think through laws and that process and how do we build political power for people so that maybe a few less community members experience harm in the future. And so we launched the policy table. That's just like kind of a fancy name. I saw like a question in there, like, what is a policy table? We wanted to make ourselves feel, I think, like a little bit more rooted and grounded and professional in what we were doing. Like, it's not a space where we go and plan direct actions. Direct actions are important. It's just not what we do. We are all about how do we get directly impacted people to the front of the room to go talk to the lawmaker to say like, hey, this thing that happened could have either not happened or had more accountability afterwards if this policy were different. And that's what we do. We go work on it. So we have a whole platform of policies that are from the families. Like this is not just where people with degrees make decisions and then like bring out other people to talk about their trauma. No, no, no. Like everything we do, we talk about collectively together. We decide our next steps going forward together. And yeah, that's our policy table. And we have made real change. Like we had a bill pass recently that banned ticket and arrest quotas statewide. So in the state of Ohio, it is illegal for your local police department or law enforcement department to have an arrest quota or a ticket quota that they're trying to meet by the end of the month. And that sounds small. It doesn't sound like, well, that doesn't solve police involved shootings. You're right. It doesn't. But what it does do is it takes down at least some of the potential interactions that community members have with law enforcement. And so hopefully, those small things kind of build up into bigger and bigger wins.
That's really awesome. It's been a really awesome thing to watch grow and be a part of. Um, you really do center the families also in the policy table and empower them to be the people who are making the statements and talking with the politicians if they would like to. So I appreciate that. Let's see. You answered like 90% of my questions already.
I'm a bit of a talker once I get
I love it.
going.
No, I love it. I love it. I love it. So, on the opposing side of the work that you are doing with Ohio families, um, is organizations like the Fraternal Order of Police, and
Hmm.
they're influential in our government.
Hmm.
Some would say they have way more influence than the people do.
Hmm.
So, what's your strategy in engaging with law enforcement unions and institutions that may resist the changes that we're trying to implement?
You know, it's an evolving target, and I think it depends on the specific, very specific circumstance. It would be easy to say, we're never working with law enforcement on police reform. It would be very easy to say that and very valid. I think there are families who feel that way, and that's 1,000% their right. And I think that it's a situation by situation basis for us as a group. For the most part, I would say we do not work aligned ever, except there are instances where I think there are conditions that create an awkward and uncomfortable collaboration. One of them was on the quotas bill because there was a local chief of police who had a quota system that led to a lot of officers being fired. That upset the FOP Lodge. And so that's an area where we are aligned in eliminating quotas um, in a specific way. Um, and 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 I don't think it's a bad thing as long as we're really wide open, like eyes wide open about the limitations of being on the same team, and making sure that we're really thoroughly reviewing everything so that we don't miss something. And I think that's also part of the like brilliant folks we have on the policy table. We have a lot of natural born cynics and skeptics who are really good, I think, about shutting down the optimists like me when that's needed, to bring a bit of a reality check. But like that balance is so key. I really feel like we have, I mean, the level of trust we've built in the policy table allows for us to, when it makes sense, align with groups that we would generally oppose on specific issues because we're able to trust each other enough to, if we all collectively decide we're going to walk a couple of steps down that path, it's okay. Now, there's plenty of instances where um, I I would have to just be quiet because I couldn't find something nice to say about something I saw from many members of the FOP. Um, but you know, I we live in Ohio, and I think it's important to be realistic about what your goal is. If your goal is to take down the union, then you will have a different set of strategies and tactics. If your goal is to pass a piece of legislation where there's alignment, then you have a different set of strategies and tactics. And so,
Yes, she is saying
sometimes you
that.
can be just human with each other, and I think that's an interesting spot for people who are not directly impacted. I was texting someone earlier today about, particularly, I think, for European Americans, white people. Co-conspiratorship should always be the goal, not just being an ally. And sometimes being a co-conspirator means that you don't ask the people who are carrying all the trauma to go sit in the meeting with the FOP. Um,
Facts.
right? Like there are ways to be a co-conspirator without centering yourself. And I think that that's that's what I always strive for. I'm sure I don't always get it right, but I try. Because I think it's really important to like set an example that we might live in a state that's gerrymandered to hell and back. We might live in a state that one day has a Democrat majority, but the reality is neither party actually really works for all of us all that much. So we should all do our part to just try and make the world a little bit of a better place for our neighbors and our community members.
Facts. Someone earlier was asking some questions about the bill that we got passed. What was my brain just stopped? Oh, can you talk to us about the support from the legislators
Yeah,
in passing that bill?
yeah, that was a really wonderful process. So most bills in Ohio, they don't actually get past the first General Assembly they're introduced. So Ohio's like legislative calendar, we are a little unique. We're on a 2-year cycle. So every 2 years we have elections for all of our House seats, and then I think it's a third of our Senate seats. And every 2 years, the like legislative session, it's called the General Assembly, resets. And they start again and they pick new leadership and all of that kind of stuff. And all the bills from before, like it's a clean slate for whatever didn't get finished. And then things have to be reintroduced. Usually, bills, when they're introduced in their first General Assembly, that's kind of just like the first drop in the bucket. They usually don't move along very much. And that's kind of what happened with this bill. So it was introduced previously in the previous General Assembly, just testing the waters, and it was bipartisan. So we had a Democrat champion and a Republican champion. And the Republican champion, he himself is a member of law enforcement, and just believed in not having quotas dictate policing practices. And so yeah, we, asked them to reintroduce the bill, this General Assembly, which they did. And then the bill, once it gets introduced, it like goes into a committee. However, it's assigned by leadership. They do hearings if they want. They do not have to do more other than just like the first hearing, which is asking the sponsors to come and explain the bill. But this bill moved. So it had its hearings, which meant we could go and testify in support. The only opponent for the bill this time was the police chief, who is known to use quotas. And then the bill just continued to move. We asked for all members of the General Assembly to pass it unanimously, because it was just a really simple, straightforward piece of legislation where it bans all forms of ticket and arrest quotas, including informal quotas. So it doesn't have to just say this is a quota in the policy. Like it's anything resembling a performance metric based on your arrests and your tickets. And then it also, which is honestly to me was really exciting to see them include, it includes an anonymous reporting piece. So if law enforcement feel that they're under a quota system, they have a way to anonymously report that to the Attorney General's office.
That's
So
amazing.
it is, right? It's not just a, hey, you shouldn't do it. It includes that like carrot, right? Like the teeth in that, like, hey, we're serious about this. Like the General Assembly expects prosecution should quotas be occurring. And so we had a lot of impacted family members be willing to go and testify on the bill. We also did like one-on-one meetings with lawmakers. and just urged
I'll never
support.
forget the dude that couldn't figure out Zoom or whatever, and he was
Yes,
holding up pieces of paper.
I talk about that VIX all the time. So
That
you
was so
all,
funny. Republican too. That's what was funny.
he was a Republican. He's still in the legislature. I think he's an attorney, but I might be wrong. And this gentleman you would expect him to have never, ever, ever agreed to a meeting with us. But I've gone and testified a lot, like dozens and dozens of times. And so I think part of that was just like kind of inoculating them to my presence that you can have a conversation with me and I'm not going to be running down the hall screaming, even if inside that's how I felt. I won't
Yes.
do that in person. And so, that one thing led to another. And we had this gentleman who he could not figure out his sound on Zoom. He could hear
That
us,
was
but
so funny.
could not unmute himself. So Vix and I are explaining to him the bill. He's writing his questions on a notepad and then holding it up for us to read out. And, you know, it was
It
so
was
precious.
literally the best. It was the best Zoom I've ever been on. I like.
And
I laughed so hard.
it was hilarious. And it was also, I think, a really important humanizing moment,
It
right?
really
Because
was. It really
that
was,
it's an
especially for
intimidating
me.
process. Yes. I mean, like I'm seeing the comments, the entire goal seems to be to exhaust average people. 1,000%.
Facts.
They don't want to hear from us. They don't want to hear feedback. They don't want to feel bad. They want to feel like they're championing people. Like they don't want to feel like people are upset with them. The point is to wear you out so that you disengage, and then they
Hmm.
can just appease the people with the money, the people with the loudest voice, and then ignore the rest of us. And so I think that's part of what's so important about like the policy table and what everyone here is doing. Like, get engaged. They're scared of us. They are scared of us. It's why they legislate from a place of fear so often, because they fear what they don't understand and they hate not being part of the cool kids club. And like
It's the facts.
that's how it feels for them. And so our most popular like video that we put on TikTok, we didn't have any comments at all. It was literally a snapshot. You can see it on the OFU Pack Talk account. It's pinned where we had a Republican lawmaker on the record talking about the lunatics in Portland took slavery out of their state constitution. And I was sitting in that hearing and I texted Aki, who does our comms, and I was like, go grab that clip now. Like, because it's recorded. And
Yeah.
I was like, it is at this moment in the hearing. And he pulled it down, snipped it up, put it up, and we had over 100,000 views. And like, people need to see that. They need to see what
Hmm.
those people say when they think no one's watching and no one's paying attention.
Facts.
I'm starting to ramble. You guys got to slow me
No,
down.
you're fine. You're fine. You are fine. I just want to look up here and see. Okay, yeah, we'd answered everything. So what has been your most significant obstacle or lesson learned in trying to turn advocacy into law in Ohio?
I think I don't know if this was a lesson I like learned the hard way. I don't think it was, but realizing that it's easy to talk to people who agree with you, and it's much harder when the majority don't. And so you have to figure out how can I say this in a way that they will agree without feeling like I've sacrificed a piece of myself. Because there's an element of that, of feeling like you have to hold your tongue when people, frankly, they need to be checked, but you know that if you're the one checking them in that moment, they're not going to hear the rest of what you really need them to take away from that interaction. So I that's hard. I think like patience is something that I'm still working to learn. I don't
Grace?
grace grace for candidly for myself. like I put a lot of pressure on myself to deliver because I don't take it lightly that people who have buried their children and their brothers and their fathers um, allow me to walk with them on their path to power. And I don't ever want them to feel like I've let them down or that I didn't go the distance on at least trying. And, I think sometimes, like, I've called you when I've needed to talk about how, hey, like, this isn't moving fast enough. We're not at the end yet. I haven't given them enough of a win. And you've had to say, like, the journey is a win, right? Like, slow down and like feel the fact that you have 10 people who just felt so empowered they went and spoke on their own, right? Like
At
those
the state
things.
house, no less. Not just at city council or,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like literally at the state house in front of our state legislators.
yeah.
You have empowered families of victims to do that. It's
I,
amazing.
it is, but I also like, and what I struggle with is I don't want them to ever feel like it wasn't worth it, you know? Because
Yeah,
that's
I
like
feel you.
people giving a lot of their pain and like allowing other people who they know don't respect them to still bear witness. And I think that's the biggest needle we've moved though so far. Like we've we had a Republican lawmaker who is a member of law enforcement come to our 022 Day event and stand in the back of the room for over an hour listening to people tell their stories about their loved ones. We had a second lawmaker who's a Democrat law enforcement officer stand for over an hour, leave for a hearing, and come back for another 30 minutes to hear more families tell their stories and the truth of what happened to their loved one and how that makes them feel, and what policies need to see changed. And I think, I don't maybe give us all enough credit. Like, that's a win on its own. It's not a bill, but it's somebody who makes laws who now thinks a little bit differently and sees people in a little bit more of a human way. And, you can't
Seeds
measure
planted.
that, but yeah, seeds planted that
Seeds
you just
planted.
hope they grow.
Facts. Um, so, how would you measure success outside of the actual political, like policy side?
I think it's probably what we were just talking about, right? I think success is people feeling like they did something and that it mattered. And, I mean, I basically stood there and 022, for those who don't know, it's the October 22nd is the National Day of Protest against police brutality. And our group is not like a protest type group. Like they tend to be a little bit more rooted in policy change as like the theory of change for building safer communities. I don't want to say that it's more serious because I don't think that's the right way to characterize it, but I would say it's just a little bit more of a focused and quiet, like more steady approach to change. And so we hosted inside the State House this year. We reserved a room, and we had a podium and we held a press conference. And we invited media, some of whom came, and we invited lawmakers. We had 7 come. You know how many we've
There
come
were
in our
so many
previous.
people in that room.
No, it was a pack. We need a bigger room for next year. And like
For
I booked
sure.
a smaller one because I aim small, miss small. And I did not want to have this massive room and then have families show up and be like, thanks, Emily, like you brought all of 10 people. But it was way we had like 70 people packed into that
Yeah,
room.
it was a lot.
It was packed, and we had lawmakers actually listen and take notes. rights and, like that, like seeing people be able to tell their story and it impact someone and seeing them own their power, right? Like, I don't even want to call it building power. I think it's impacted families really owning their space in the movement too. If we talk about like hardships, not from a policy perspective, but I think the hardest lesson I've learned in advocacy is that there are a lot of people who are in advocacy for themselves. It is an ego thing for them, and
Facts.
they picked police brutality because there's so much harm and trauma, and it just feeds them, and that is sick. Um,
It is.
and I I'm not like that. And it took me a long time to see it because, I've done all my like anti-bias, anti-racism. I did the white girl right fragility workbook. Like I've done all of that kind of stuff. And so I always assume good intent, right? Like I assume everyone's bringing the same energy I am into a space where we might say the wrong thing or make a few wrong, we're going to get it wrong, but it's with like a good heart. And so you educate, you don't like shut down and you, right, like lean into those things. And the reality is there are some grifters who prey upon this space because they want the clout that comes with someone's greatest trauma. And that is disgusting.
Facts.
And I didn't get that. I made that mistake more than once where I said, well, this person, I would go and I would be like, this person, no, they're bringing all this enthusiasm and they want to help with our event and, they're going to help put our stuff out. And Sabrina and I see Tanya's on here, Tanya, and like some of the other families would be like, uh-huh, uh-huh. But Emily, like, no, it's not gonna go. But then, and they're like, and Sabrina, I think she always tell me, she's like, I don't like to see you get your hopes up because I don't like to see when you come back down. And that's happened more than once where
Yeah.
I've really depended on people and thought, no, they get it. Like they get that these women and these men too, because we have dads too, and brothers as part of the movement. Like, no, they know that those folks are living my worst nightmare as a parent. Surely they would never take advantage of that space and that harm and use it to further themselves and their own goals. And the reality is, some people do.
They do. More than what I'd like to admit, honestly.
Right. It's awful.
I've been a lot disappointed myself, as you know. Like we've been
Yeah.
disappointed together.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So, what is your long-term vision for the relationship between OFU PAC and the policy table, and how do you sustain the work that you do?
Yeah. So, the policy table is like a campaign, I guess. Like it's not a real entity in that it's got a website, it's got its own brand, it's a different set of programs, but it doesn't have like a place where you can go and donate to the policy table. So it's like housed within OFUPAC. So it's like the C4's project, basically. That is
Gotcha.
our
Okay.
campaign. And then we've got, the whole policy platform of I think there's 16 to 20 different policies on there. Like to me, that's the work of a lifetime. I mean, that's like, I would love to see us get it done in a decade. And the reality is we're looking at like 70 plus years for some of the goals on there. And that sucks, but but my vision is that we build it and it can sustain itself. Like we build this space and we keep building wins and it continues onwards and onwards. Same for OFUPAC. So we accept donations. If you would like to donate time, money, and all that kind of stuff. We do seek out grants, but the policy table is not a grant funded project. Like that is just heart work from us. The times we've gotten grants, it's usually small amounts for like things like communications. We ran a billboard last year, which was awesome.
Yes, it was. Oh, it was
Really
fantastic. The
exciting.
placement couldn't have been better.
Yes, we did it right on the corner. So anyone in their legislative offices in one building, we were right out their window. And then as they left and walked across the street to go into the state house, they were still seeing us flash in the sidewalk. So yeah, that was excellent.
It
But
satisfies my
yeah,
petty heart.
yeah, you know,
So tell us how we can get involved.
oh yeah, so you can sign up for on the website, the ofupac.org, to just get email updates from us. So you'll get updates, and we're not big emailers. Like you won't get even a weekly email. I think I don't know, Hunter's on here. I mean, we email what, maybe a couple times a month, sometimes a little more, but usually a little less, honestly. And you can plug in that way. You can, on our website, there's also a contact us form. So if you fill that out and you're like, hey, I'd like to come to the policy table and help with research, you can do that. We do keep it like a closed space in that like someone's gonna have to vouch for you, like
Two
so
vouches and like
you're
somebody
gonna
has to cross the River Jordan and then you can
right,
come.
you're gonna be
It is a
screened.
safe, that is like a safety space, like
It
for the
is.
families, really.
It
So
is. I mean, because people share their worst traumas.
they really
And
do.
that has to be a space where that is comfortable for folks. So we've I won't even say we've asked, we have ordered people to leave and kicked them out if they have violated.
Yeah.
We have community norms. We're doing community agreements again next year. So in January, we're sending community agreements to anyone who wants to come and they have to sign and like abide by the rules, which, it's kind of Fight Club rules. Like what happens at the policy table stays here. You respect the space, and it is the family space first. Families are always welcome. Everyone else, you're welcome as long as you don't cause harm. And if you do, we will address it and it will be severe. Because, even I have learned the hard way on what happens when you allow people who are in your space just because they want to ride the coattails of your work. So,
It's facts.
yeah.
So what's next?
What's next for the policy table?
Yeah.
We are working on a new bill. So we have, which we have two bills that got introduced at 022. I have to share, it was the coolest thing. This is unheard of, y'all. So we hosted our event in the State House. And then we had State Representative Darnell Brewer from out of Cleveland, District 22, I believe. And at the end of the event, he surprised us and said, hey, I've got the bills that we've been working on. One is for mandatory substance use and alcohol screening after use of force. So if you're a state like employee, a bus driver, if you crash that bus, you will be screened for drugs and alcohol. If you are a law enforcement officer and you shoot someone, it depends on your department's policy. There's no state rule on whether or not you're screened for substances. And banned substances for law enforcement also include steroids, by the way. So there's no rules on whether or not you screen for that. And then some departments, if they do screen, some of them do within 2 hours of the incident, which is what we're asking for in our bill. Some do 7 days. You can have 7 days to go get screened for drugs and alcohol after a use of force incident. Some of them, they never screen them at all. And so we're working on a bill. It's been introduced. I can't think of the number now. It's House Bill, is it 500, 458 maybe? It's on our
I don't remember
Instagram.
either. I don't
It's
remember either.
after 7 o'clock, my brain starts shutting down. But it is on our Instagram, OFU Pack. And yeah, we want people to sign the letter. So we're doing a letter campaign where if you fill out the Action Network, which is linked somewhere, and we'll be emailing it out on our list too, but it's on our Facebook and all that. It goes to your lawmaker. So you like put your name in there, you put your address in, and then your elected officials receive this email saying, we want you to support this bill. We want it to get its hearings. We want to see your name on the list of co-sponsors. So we're pushing that. Now, what I said before, it takes a couple of general assemblies usually. It was just introduced for the first time. So we're realistic that this general assembly is just getting people talking about it, getting lawmakers more comfortable with it and saying, we screen people who want Medicaid benefits for substances. We can screen law enforcement officers when they discharge their
Thanks.
weapons. Um,
Absolutely.
that is not a novel idea. It's accountability. We're holding everyone to the same standard, period. And if you have a problem with that standard for law enforcement, then you should have a problem with it for people who are on Medicaid and for people who are truck drivers and bus drivers and all those other things, teachers.
Thanks.
So yes, we're working on that. And then we also have, which was I don't, you should be talking about the other piece of
You
legislation,
talk
which is
about it.
we're commemorating 022. So Vix worked with Representative Brewer and he introduced legislation to actually acknowledge police brutality in the state of Ohio. And so we are working on that too. I know it's something you shouldn't have to celebrate, right? But also like acknowledgement is a step along the path to enlightenment. So, you know, one
It
step at a
is.
time. So
It
we're working
is.
on that. And then if you live in Columbus, we've got a local campaign that I think Chana was on and talking about, was it last week, maybe?
Two
Two
weeks
weeks
ago.
ago. Because, yeah. And so we're working to do a non-police mental health response program in the city of Columbus. So if you call 911 and you're having a behavioral health crisis, or you're calling for someone that you're with who's having a behavioral health crisis, once our ballot initiative program is implemented, then what happens next is they would actually get a non-police response. So it'd be like a clinician peer supporter who respond to them and help get them connected to whatever the care that they need is. So yeah, that's we're working on that too, and always need help for that. I see a question in the chat. Even if my reps are progressive, should I call them? Absolutely. We did not get unanimous support from the Dem caucus to sign on to our bills. So, yep, reach out to them. You might think your rep is progressive, and we'll tell you real quick if they are or they are not, if they're already on our list. Um,
Are they on
yeah.
our list?
But Carrie, if for us, yeah. So State Rep Crystal was an original co-sponsor on the bill with Representative Brewer. So she's really held it down for us. Another thing we're working on is actually with her. We're working on mental health policies, which really excited about. Yeah.
Awesome. Amy says, how gross that they need several sessions to see people as people. And that is real.
Mm,
It's very sad.
it is real. It is. Um, yeah. I wish I had an uplifting comment for that, but I don't. What I will remind you though is that I think it's important for us to remember to see them as people too. They want
Yeah.
us to see them as these like illustrious figures of power who, pull all these levers but don't actually have to show up to constituent meetings or
But they pick their nose in session. So, like,
yeah, yeah, they do. They do those things. I mean,
like they're human beings.
they're human beings. Like, yeah,
Misguided and hateful sometimes. But
yeah,
so let me
yeah,
ask you one more question before I let you go.
yeah.
What motivated you to get involved in this type of work?
You know, I didn't grow up in Ohio. I grew up in Northern Virginia. I was born Maryland, grew up on like the Virginia side of DC. I went to non-white schools until either middle school or high school, was the first time. Like I was one of two white kids in my second grade class. I went to a school where the majority of my school did not speak English as their first language. I went to a school where most of my classmates, their parents, were undocumented. Um, and so I have always been comfortable in non-white spaces and eyes wide open to people being treated differently than me. And the only difference I could really find between us was how we looked. I noticed it from teachers at times. I noticed it from coaches at times. Um, I noticed it, I was raised in the Methodist church, and you do this confirmation thing, and you basically like give a speech, right? Like when you're in church. And one of my friends' mom reminded me that mine in fifth grade was comparing like the three faces of God to MLK. Right? So like I've always kind of been more justice oriented and just thinking about how does that show up in faith, religion, in community, in safety. And so, I when I eventually like came to Ohio for grad school, I didn't leave, started a family. Um, and I was working on health equity work. So I was doing a lot of like exposing the inequities in our healthcare access, in particular, the treatment of people who have Medicaid for their insurance and people who are uninsured, and why are their health outcomes so much worse than people who have private insurance. Just working on through all of that. When COVID happened, I could not be like physically present anymore in community because I had a really sick infant. So I was doing a lot of ghostwriting for a Black led nonprofit doing anti-bias, anti-racism work. And then I got asked to volunteer on, the qualified immunity campaign. And I was like, well, I've got time. But, I kept checking in with my friends, and I was like, why do they want me to be in there? Like, I am a white woman. I should not be in there. And, my friends were like, these are like my black friends, right, doing that work. And they were like, well, Emily, like, it's Ohio. There's a lot of white people. Maybe it'd be good for them to see a white person willing to say something and do something different, um, willing to be part of something that is not about them. And so, yeah, I think that's where it comes from for me is I want to live in a world where, my kids and everyone's kids get the care they need when they need it. They feel safe. And they feel like the safety systems that we have are built with them in mind. And that we all have the same amount of safety in our communities. We don't have that here. So, I worry one day, one of my children has more significant challenges with their mental health. And, I never know when it's going to be our interaction. Um, we've already had some that have been traumatizing with law enforcement. And so it didn't start personal for me quite in that way, but it's evolved that way. And I just think that's not uncommon. There are a lot of us who our loved ones in our immediate family are definitely at higher risk for riskier encounters that could result in significant harm or injury or death, God forbid, with law enforcement. And there are some law enforcement where I think it's just who they are. And there are some law enforcement where I think it's how they were trained. And there are some law enforcement where I think they never should have been there at all. And so, I just feel like if I have something to give, I wouldn't be able to look myself in the eye if I didn't give it. And I think this, you know, at this moment in time, the families that I get to work for feel like I have something to give, and it's the honor of my life to be able to give it. So that's why I
That's
do it.
awesome. How do you take care of yourself?
Yeah, I would love to have an answer for that.
I knew you were going to say
You know,
that. That was the hardest question.
it really was. That's where you stumped me.
Sorry.
I I think like what you said earlier, trying to give myself grace. I'm trying to be more present with myself when I'm burning out. Like this little sticker back here says burnt out but optimistic. That's me. Um,
You
but
really are. You really are a really optimistic person, and you've had such a good influence on me because I am. I say that I'm a realist, but really, I'm very cynical, cynical about the world, and you remind me that I don't need to be that way all the time. I
most of
appreciate
the
that about
time,
you.
though, probably should be. But yeah.
Very cynical, but I just want to thank you for joining us tonight. And I look forward to our next meeting. Thanks again for being here. Thank you all for being here too. Um, this is going to be up on Be Eager on YouTube and on the 60K and Below Substack, as long as TikTok lets me have it. And next Tuesday, we'll be having, not next Tuesday, 2 Tuesdays from now, we will be having Maisha T. Hill. So make sure that you join.
Nice.
Thanks again. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
You're welcome. Oh, get out of